And once again, welcome to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today in the studio is Thomas Anderson. He is the superintendent for Randolph Public Schools. Thomas, welcome to Living in the 21st Century.
Thank you. Good evening.
Sure. Um, today we are looking at quite a few things that are going on around Randolph in terms of the diverse population you have to deal with, what you're doing as a superintendent for the schools and so forth. So would you just care to enlighten us as to what's going on in your world?
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be able
Sure.
to share, about Randolph. Randolph is about 3,000 students,
Okay.
a little bit south of Boston, so we're right on the other side of Milton, so it's about 12 miles from downtown. It's one of the most diverse populations in the state of Massachusetts. And, when we say that, we have a population of little over 50% black, but in that population, we have several students from Haiti, West Africa, the Caribbean. Our next largest population is actually Vietnamese, and the overall Asian population, which is about 18%,
Okay.
and then a Spanish-speaking population of about 13, 14%. So that gives a lot, it gives a lot of flavor to the school system and brings a lot of, to me, a lot of benefit, especially in the world that we're living in right now, and,
Yes.
and the different type of things that we hear about all the time. So.
Yes. So basically, with such a big, diverse population, what plans you have in place that could really cater to those different needs
Yeah.
and variations, and at the same time making them as successful as possible?
I think one is, you focus on education, you making the academics a priority, really trying to engage our families. I've been there for 3 years, and we put forth a really, really strong effort to make sure that we're trying to bridge that gap and work with our families, especially those who are coming to the country and many didn't go to school in the U.S. So we're really trying to get them acclimated and have them have a better understanding about, the American educational system,
Right.
and understand that it's there for them. We need to make sure that we're working on their behalf and making sure that they're using their voice and empowering them to be able to come in. So when we talk about diversity, and not saying, well, it's diversity and it's not something that's
Yes.
important, or it's a trendy term that's used sometimes, but really making sure that, we pull our families in, the type of curriculum that we are able to offer, making
Right.
sure we've, dug a little bit deeper and really using curriculum that reflects the needs of our students, or reflects the backgrounds and the different, the different students that we have, in our school system.
Exactly. And with such a program, I believe that you have several teachers to deal with these over 3,000 students you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. What kind of plan or system you have put in place that motivate these teachers to give
Yeah.
the best and to really commit to the development of the academic excellence of these students?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think that, people get into education because they're motivated. They want to be there, and they want to do, right by young people and those
Right.
type of things. So I think our teachers are already self-motivated, but some of the things that we try to do is make sure we're equipping them with the tools that they need. So we're in a world of technology.
Yes.
So we try to make sure that we're improving access to, laptops and iPads, and allowing them to use smart boards and those type of things. So we've made sure, all of our elementary schools have at least 2 computer labs.
Right.
They have laptop carts that they can, roll in when they need them, adding more smart boards so they would have, the touch screens and those type of things. So we think that that'll help make the overall process more exciting.
Yes.
So, the more tools the educator has, or, any worker that has some tools that are exciting, they're going to be able to enjoy more of what they do. So the job itself is very hard.
Yes,
So,
understand.
we want to make sure that we're trying to support our teachers and our overall staff, and try to give them those tools to really, pull everything
Yes.
they can out of our students. So they'll,
Yeah, I know you would appreciate the fact that we are living in some very turbulent times,
Yeah.
especially politically speaking, and it just crossed my mind to really ask this question.
Okay.
With the president earlier today deciding to abolish DAPA, which is going to interfere with the with young people,
Yeah.
those who President Obama would have given the opportunity to work here under certain concessions and go to school and have an education, simply because they didn't come here on their own, but they would have brought here as kids by their parents. How do you see a decision like that really affecting maybe some of those who are into your school today? How would this affect them academically speaking?
You know, I think from an academic standpoint, I don't see where that impact would be in terms of us providing the education to them. I think what it does, it's going to be a distraction to them. I mean, when you think about students having to be concerned about themselves, having to be concerned about their parents or other siblings that may no longer be allowed to stay in the U.S., I think that's where the challenge is. So it's incumbent upon us as educators to really have those honest conversations with them. Really, again, I mentioned a minute ago about empowering and using your voice to really see, having them understand what are the rules for them, what recourse do they have. And I think as a society, we really have to step up and really think about what is right. You know, where these young people did not put themselves in this situation. So how can we better support them in terms of policy and practice, but also for that mental support, because they hear something today and say, well, possibly in 6 months, your life is going to change. This is the only place you know is home, and those type of things may change for you. So I think, my role is to make sure, what are we doing to better support them in this time.
I understand. Yes. One of the challenges too that I would really reach out to you, we would have heard recently over the years, probably last 2 years, a lot of attention was given to charter schools opposed to public schools. What differentiation is such that would cause so much attention to be pointed at charity opposed to public? And I guess both have great teachers, right? But what's so much really?
That it is an interesting discussion, and for me, I had an opportunity when I was a principal in Maryland to leave and go to Chicago and open a charter school. And it was a very good opportunity to start from scratch, and there are some things that you're able to initiate. There are certain rules that, in terms of staffing, that most charters, they don't have unions. And I always believe that whether we had a union or not, you treat people right. You don't abuse some of the expectations that you have. The whole overall expectation is to put things in place that are going to benefit students. And prior to my job, coming to Randolph, I was an assistant superintendent in D.C., where it was a different experience with the charters, because then there's a lot of competition, and I believe that we're in the world we live in today. Competition is good, and I think it makes us all step up a little bit and really assess what kind of job are we doing. So when we really look to see charter, I hate to put it where we say charter versus public, because the charter school is a public school.
Well, that's true.
And I think there's some flexibility that charters are given that some of the traditional public schools are not given. So when I look at it, I see, what is it that I need to do as a superintendent and working with our staff to make sure we are a viable option. And it's the same way when parents choose to send their child to, whether it's a charter school or a private school or a Catholic school, so what are the reasons why the parents are doing that? And I think we need to be more in tune with what our parents' needs are and what what they're thinking. So, with that, we know we had the charter debate in Massachusetts, and they had the vote and those type of things, but it still doesn't solve much, because we still need to have a clear understanding of what the purpose of education is completely. And stop making it where it's one versus the other, and seeing, are we meeting the needs of our students? And if a parent chooses and they believe that specific school with that staff can address the needs of their child, then that's fine.
Okay. So for your MCAS and ELA programs, what are you doing right now to enhance or enrich those that would bring children up to standard in this time?
So much depends on, again, the curriculum that we offer, and making sure that we we have to stay on top of things. The world is changing so quickly, and the conversation earlier about technology and the tech world. Their objective is to make people want to keep, striving and wanting the newest thing. It's a challenge for education because
Yes,
we're
definitely.
trying to keep up with those type of things, and we're the ones who have to train the individuals to get ready to create the next device and those type of things. So when we're looking at, you know, MCAS scores or even SAT scores, and I really look at the point about what exactly does it mean? What's the teaching and learning process? I believe that there has to be some kind of assessment. Sometimes there's a little much, but
Right.
we have to agree on something to really make sure that the education we're providing in Randolph is equal to the education they're providing in, California.
Yes.
And so when we really look at what are we doing with the, the MCAS scores, but also breaking it apart and seeing what happens to get to that point. Where's the teaching and learning process, and the doing well on that type of assessment should be a byproduct
Right.
of quality instruction, a quality resources that are in the room. We talked about technology again and just having access. How are we getting students, multitasking is not always a positive thing.
Right.
So really getting it where how do we get them to focus and narrow that scope, so that way we're producing children that are going out into the world and they can compete anywhere.
Correct.
And
Okay. So, getting back to the teachers that are under your umbrella, um, are they involved in consistent educational programs to meet this time of season? With, as you said, with technology, the world is traveling so fast.
yeah,
I think the old system and the old way of doing things probably somewhat deleted in some way. What are they doing in terms of enhancing themselves that when they come back to the classrooms, they can really enrich the students?
I mean, the first thing is, the state of Massachusetts with the certification process and those type of things, where all the teachers are in public, at least for all of our teachers are certified, they have to continuously stay on top of their own professional development. What we do as a school system, so for example, there's a half day every month in which we provide system-wide professional development, and it depends what the needs are, and we break it
Right.
up a little bit where now we're going to give some of that time back to the schools, but it's still every month they have that opportunity to be able to do that. And if we just talk about ELA, we have a partnership where we've been working with Harvard with a program called Lectio, which is just about early literacy.
Right.
And so providing that level of support to our teachers, so that way they can continue to stay on top of their skills, to dig
Yes.
a little bit deeper. And so with that, they can pull in aspects of technology and those type of things. But when we think about it, when you're teaching children how to read, you have to be more creative because of the world that we're in.
Exactly.
But when it comes down to it, we're still teaching people how to read as we taught people how to read years ago.
Yes.
It's just the distractions are different today, and we're
That's true.
competing with more things to
Yes.
make it harder for them to kind of, focus on what we need to do.
Yes, and I also see that you would have mentioned here, working with Emerson College and Asia Society, focus on students' social emotional needs.
Yeah.
This, it seems that in the classrooms or among the students, but obviously everyone have different needs, but there's some kind of tension, some kind of stress that goes on that teachers need to be vigilant with in being able to find alternative solutions to work with. Could you expound a little bit on that?
We focus so much on lengthening the class day. We focus on, we need to spend more time reading and more time doing math, which is very important, and we know we
Yes.
need to that. However, we're not addressing the socio-emotional side of it. Some people call it
Right.
mental health and those type of things, but we have to do a better job at teaching students how to persevere, calling it grit. How do we get them to kind of work through some of those challenging problems before the level of frustration gets high and they kind of become disconnected.
Right.
So we have to balance that, and it has to be more than just talk. Lots of school systems, lots of organizations are talking about, well, how do we support mental health? And whenever something happens and it becomes a hot topic for a little while, what we're working to do is incorporating it into what we do with our students all the time. You know, for example, we have counselors at the elementary level, and they teach it's called a success class.
Yes.
But it just kind of taps into a lot of those socio-emotional behaviors as far as how do you manage stress? How do you keep your level of frustration down? How does a teacher recognize when a student is getting frustrated and kind of adjust some of those things? So some of the partnerships that we have and working with some of the other colleges and universities is just, you know, because that's a lot of what they do in terms of the education programs.
Right.
So they're producing the teachers, so we want to have an opportunity to kind of work with them and say, well, these are the students that you're going to see every day. How do we address their real life needs? So.
Okay. Right. And I also recognize you would have mentioned about level 2 and level 3 schools.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit what this is all about?
So in Massachusetts, there are level systems. So level 1 being the highest. Level 5 means that the district has had some pretty severe challenges, and the state has stepped in, and they're pretty much helping to run the district at that point. Then you have other, you know, so from 2 to 4, it can be a variety of reasons. And the reason, typically your lowest performing school, so to speak, dictates the overall level of the system. So if you have a level 4 school, the district will be considered level 4, even if the other schools are all level 1 and level 2. Now, one thing the state is doing, they're redefining how that looks. So for example, in Randolph, it was deemed an underperforming district probably almost 10 years ago, and meaning it gave it a level 4 label. However, we have no level 4 schools.
Right.
And you know, over the 3 years I've been there, we have now 2 level 2 schools.
Right.
And all of the other schools are level 3.
Yes.
So it is one of those things, and there's a combination of metrics that go into that. So one thing that we needed to do is have stronger processes and policies that have more collaboration between school board, town council, and just kind of making sure that people are really working on behalf of the school system. And there's some huge benefits over the last couple of years that we've seen, as far as, you know, we've had, the town has supported increases to our budget over the last 3 years. So we are moving in the right direction. So we do a lot of work with the state in terms of demonstrating with, you know, with the district plan and those type of things. Like any organization is going to have a strategic plan.
Right.
And so what we've been able to do is really lock in what our plan looks like. And you have to have structure and demonstrating progress, because we've had increases on both the ELA, you know, the English Language Arts, and the math. MCAS last year was for the first time in about 8 or 9 years that we had an increase in both subjects in the same year.
Beautiful.
You know, so there's a lot that's taking place, but you know, you have to have the quality structures in place to make sure that continues.
Beautiful. Okay. What about PTA programs? You have those kind of programs at your school, and how do the parents really interact in terms of really looking out for the needs of their kids and trying to bring them up to standard?
A lot of our principals, like I said, we have 6 schools, so each school has a PTA, PTO, but they also do other things during the day where they have maybe a principal's coffee, or just an open opportunity for parents to come in. So many parents, they still do the drop off, they do the pickups, and so you take advantage of some of those times, and the principals kind of stand out and have some of those informal discussions. But on a more formal side of it, they do have the PTO that has meetings in the evening, and they will discuss any of the school issues that they think are, you know, are relevant, and they have, you know, and they have the meetings with the principals. But again, it's a world of competition. So we're always competing with real life, where parents have to work, and, you know, someone has to get home and make dinner, someone has to go to a practice or a concert, and those type of things. So we're really trying to figure out how we can get better at disseminating information to parents, but really having more of a two-way dialogue. And so we haven't mastered it. I mean, I don't think there's not many people that have, but I think we continue to do a little bit better, taking more advantage of video conferencing. And, you know, we have ideas that, well, mom or dad can't make it into the parent conference,
Right.
well, we can Skype you in, we can
Yes.
video conference and get that FaceTime and have some. So I think we just need to take advantage of these ideas that are out there and really, demonstrate to our parents that yes, we are partners. We are partners in this, and we're going to try to be as flexible, be more flexible to make sure that we're hearing the
Yes.
feedback and it's translating to what their specific child needs in the classroom.
Okay. For the social economic status
Uh-huh.
in your school based on um, its diversity. We know for a fact that you have Asians, you have all types,
Yep.
but there are some better off than some. Um, and I believe this will have an impact on
Yeah.
how their children perform in school. How do you identify these kind of kids, or how do a teacher really identify these kind of kids and really try to get into their minds to let them know that, well, you know what, it's more than just where you stand financially or economically speaking, because I believe that some kids, obviously their lifestyle is going to reflect a different ambition than those who aren't. How do your teacher cope with this and try to keep everyone together?
So we do a lot of work around educational equity, and what it really does is, what are the practices? So even aside from the socioeconomic piece, just looking at how are we interacting with all students when they come through the door? Are we saying hello to a particular student, but unintentionally not speaking to the other one who comes in? Because that right there is already demonstrating the student is feeling a level of, I'm not being treated, I'm being treated a little bit differently than the other student, when in fact sometimes it's unintentional.
Yes.
So I use that as an example because when we have these conversations about equity, we have to be honest with ourselves as adults, what our own biases are, or what are the things that we don't focus on. So when it comes to the economic part of it, that information is not so much put out there. So when, I'll think of it as a teacher myself, I wouldn't know who in my class was coming from a different type of economic situation. But what I did know is I'm looking at who's in front of me, how we're engaging in class, and I had to take more time, as we need to do, to get to know our students a little bit better, which is a challenge because of the amount of time. So what we're trying to do as a district is really highlight some of these things for our teachers, but not where it's a crutch. We want to have it where we're supporting our students, not because there's something where someone feels sorry for someone else. That has nothing to do with that. We want to make sure the standard is held high for all students, no matter what the socioeconomic level is, and because really that shouldn't be a barrier to any type of education. And I think the more we get to know them, and the more people have these honest dialogues about what is important, what does true education mean, everyone will get a clear understanding that the socioeconomic part of it, it means something, but it should not prevent you from receiving the most, the highest quality education you can.
Yes. Okay. I also noticed that here in Massachusetts, well, not only here in Massachusetts, but throughout the nation, we have this may not necessarily appeal to your school, but I'm asking it anyway. There's a serious opioid outbreak, and it stems from all walks of life, all levels. Kids, for some reason, getting their hands on drugs and painkillers and doing what they want to do. Is this anything that threatens your schools? Were there any complaints? And if there were, how do you manage those kind of things?
I think we've been fortunate. I think it touches all of us just because we may not have had any direct situations. Our families reach different communities and those type of things. So we do try to have a little bit more education about it. And I know with our athletes, our athletic director has, in his parent meetings and even from last year and the previous year, just kind of sharing that information with parents so we can look for the different signs that might exist. But also, how do we support students and some of the other, some of the student athletes that may see it first, and some of the other students when they know someone that may be involved with the and having trouble dealing with opioids and those type of things, but also having that overall understanding that there's a way to be educated about it, so we can avoid allowing the rates to increase, because I mean, it's alarming.
Yes.
And for us not to have a real sense of the root of the problem, and we'll say, okay, well, it's prescription medication,
Right.
and who has access to it, but why is there that need? And I feel as though what we need to do is really look at how do we have those conversations? How can we be honest? And I think so much is about the communication that we have.
Right.
And if we're not willing to talk about it and address it head on, we're going to continue to have some challenges, and it's going to, unfortunately, may not end as quickly as we'd like it to.
Yes. So on a level of probably 1 to 10, how do you see Randolph Public Schools in this time, featuring some in Boston, probably some in Newton? There's a lot of racial tension going on, especially here in, I understand, in some schools in Newton, there were this race card playing and, this discriminating thing. Do you see that as a major threat in your school?
I don't see it as a major threat. What I see is, when we look at what is put in our face on TV and those type of things, and really trying to figure out what's going on. I think the Randolph community has a really good understanding of one another, and what I shared before is about the level of diversity that's there. I think people really appreciate their neighbor, and really try to work together, and having a good understanding about, okay, what's this world that we're in?
Okay.
We can't just coexist.
Okay.
We can't just be tolerant of one another. We need to be accepting. Now, is everything perfect? Of course not. But on a level of how I view our community and the different type of things that people are willing to discuss and willing to extend a hand and those type of things, I think they would be a good place for people to kind of look to see how a community can really come together and have a sense of belonging and have that sense of community.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we come to the end of our program.
Okay.
Thomas Anderson, Superintendent from Randolph Schools. It was really a pleasure having you here this evening on Living in the 21st Century. So thank you, and all the best and prosperity in time to come. And for all those who are listening, thank you for tuning in. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Imagine a time when no one person has brain disease. Imagine a time when no one person has Parkinson's disease, or no one person has MS. No one person is debilitated by a stroke, and no family suffers the tragedy of Alzheimer's. Some of the best minds in America are doing more than imagining. The American Brain Foundation is seeking to find cures, where life without brain disease isn't just something we can imagine, it's something we can know. Help us get there.